longer. I don't know if I want to cut that out or not. Oh yeah, I do want to cut the video feed out. That's what I want to do. So we're just talking about 2 poems probably today. 2 is Coy Mistress and Dover Beach. We're going to talk about 2 is Coy Mistress first. Did anybody understand what was happening here?
No, but we talked a little bit about it last
I
week,
read
and
it
it
twice,
turns
and I
out
couldn't
that it was super perverted.
Why is poems,
I don't know if it's
why are poems so
perverted.
difficult to understand?
For real.
Because,
Yes, that's right.
let's see, how do I explain this?
Okay, that's not.
How do I explain this?
Whoa.
Radios, yes.
I'm not, I didn't really understand it too much, but I thought it was like a butler or somebody who worked for another person.
You're talking about 2 is Coy Mistress.
I'm pretty sure,
I think you're talking about Last Duchess.
I'm not. Beginning stuff.
Yeah.
They're so short, so I don't know.
Last Duchess is pretty long. Why are poems so difficult to understand?
I mean, I get the language. Sometimes, you know, it's the wording is sometimes difficult, or it's, you know, they're not.
Yeah.
A lot of context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can figure this out. So, I mean, how do I... Because it's on purpose. Writers make it hard to understand on purpose. It's unlike, you know, most writing you do where you try to be clearly understood, but they don't want you to understand immediately. It's not the purpose of poetry. I guess it's meant to, I mean, you ever done puzzles before?
It's like a puzzle. Makes you like think about your next move, or
Well, like, just
what
because-
piece goes into the puzzle or something like that.
Like for me, some of
Yeah,
them
it's-
that
it's
are
like-
harder to understand are the ones that are like set up in very weird ways, like just the words, like the way they're the stanzas and everything.
Yeah, and that's what makes 2 is Coy Mistress so hard to understand, because there's so much packed into such a short space. I think a lot of the words that could be in there are just removed, because it gets kind of, it's just the grammatical necessities, and it doesn't really do
It's just
everything.
At this point.
But it's kind of like it rewards people who are willing to do the work to figure out what it means, I guess. It's like yeah, it really is like a puzzle. Like a lot of the joy in doing a puzzle is working hard to figure it out. And then once you got it, you go, oh,
Yeah.
that was fun. I like that. And a lot of things in life I think are valuable in that way. Somebody do something that's like really hard, that's something that you're just good at that you do. I am very, very impatient with most things. So like my brother, he learned to, for example, play guitar on his own. So he can't play it well. I mean, he's not like a aficionado. He can't just like start playing something. He's got to know the chord he's going to start on. And, you know, but some people will just from scratch, like not because it's a part of school or anything, they'll just say, you know what, I'm going to buy a guitar and figure out how to play guitar. It's how my brother actually got his job he has now, where he bought, like for Christmas one year, one of our high school friends bought him Sculpey. You ever heard of this stuff? Sculpey. It's this weird like clay you can buy that you can mold and you bake it and it makes it into like a little statue that lasts forever. Bought him that. He was like really fascinated with it. Like he was like, oh, I'm gonna make a Superman. And then like he got some more Sculpey and started trying to do a more detailed Superman. And then he was like, man, I really want to get in, like, do this better. He's like, but there's limits to this stuff. It's every time I try to push it more detailed, it, like, falls apart. So he went and found better Sculpey, like Super Sculpey or something. I think it actually was called Super Sculpey. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's the literal name. You can buy it at Hobby Lobby, I think. And, like, he made another Superman because he loves Superman. Big Superman fan. He kept doing it more and more and more until eventually now he makes sculptures that are this big. They're that tall. They look less detailed. In fact, more detailed probably than an action figure. That are usually like that tall. And That's what he does for a living now. Because he was so fascinated with, I guess, the puzzle of trying to work out, like, how do I convey how something is supposed to look visually into a physical medium that's tiny. Like, how do I, and he like uses like needles and like little tiny toothpick things to, like, poke at it, and he comes up with new little materials that'll do like the shaping and stuff. He's got those like glasses that are magnifying glasses that go over his head so you can see like real close up. But it's often it really is sort of like anything like worth doing or figure a skill involves like, you know, trying to get good at something that requires a lot of detail and a lot of like problem solving. And if you try to pick up like an instrument or something like that, and usually I'm too impatient for that stuff, and I think, will this be worth the reward over time, is what I always tell myself, and I go, no. Like if I have fun doing it, like for example, like somebody was telling me one time, I said, like I had this game that I play called PUBG. I just like to feel like I'm winning. That's all I care about. I just want to feel like I'm winning. So like when people play like Fortnite, you know, this is the same concept, but Fortnite's for children and PUBG's for adults. But if you play PUBG, like I just want to win. That's all I care about. I want to do well. And they were like, I was like, how do I get better at shooting stuff? Because I'm really bad at it. And they said, here's what you do. You drop into a very populated area and you just die over and over again. I was like, that's not fun. I don't want to do that. I just want to die constantly. But they said that's what you do is you get your gun and you just practice shooting people and you shoot more and more and more people and you die hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times until you get better. And I was just like, no, that does not sound fun. Because to me, like I think, what is the risk reward here? I was like, I always feel good when I'm trying to do well. I feel terrible when I'm just dying a lot. So it doesn't work for me. And some people, they don't have the problems dealing with those sorts of like barriers in the way. And I think that if you're willing to be like patient with it, and not worry about the fact that you don't understand anything, poetry can have that reward, like a puzzle. And sometimes, I mean, poets, they want to convey to you quickly what it means. But usually it's, the whole purpose is not necessarily, it's supposed to be like almost like a painting, you know, where it's a snapshot of something. It's not meant to be like a full start to finish story that leads you from here to there. Always. Sometimes it can be.
You're supposed to be able to analyze it and get something out of it.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's not meant to be like where you get nothing out of it. Because if it was like that, it would just be frustrating. I'm sure there is a poet out there who's done some sort of stupid postmodern poetry where he just took those like, I don't know, those little like fridge magnet words and just tossed them on the ground, and then however they ended up, he just wrote that order of the words down and was like poetry. And like I don't agree with that type of. There's got to be some purpose to it, some meaningful order. And I think that good poetry should have some concern for rhythm and sound. I think that what we have a lot these days is people have kind of gotten rid of the care for rhythm and sound. They don't care for it at all. That's why most poetry, you see these, I'm going to say most poetry, but a lot of poetry is really bad. In fact, I like to take pictures of bad poetry from the New Yorker, which I subscribe to.
Coffee shop where you snap to clap.
I don't know about that.
All the bad poems are.
I do know that like I take a lot of the pictures of these crappy poems in the New Yorker. Every time I see one that I hate, I'm just like, oh man, I really hate this. Let's take a picture of it.
Pictures.
Well, he's just
keep
gonna show
going.
up.
Yeah, I generally will just keep them. I added like iCloud to my
just
phone, and
show
now
how
all
you
of my
keep
old
them
pictures
active.
from all time are like showing up. Oh wait, here's a comic from the New Yorker. Does that mean I got a poem nearby? No, the comics in the New Yorker are actually pretty funny. It's the poems that are just terrible.
Probably just go down.
Dadgum, I added iCloud to my phone, so like I bought, like, you know, you can buy space on iCloud. Do you know that? Okay, here's a poem. Oh my gosh, I hate this poem. Okay, so I remember I read this the other day. In fact, I'll heart it. Do you know you sometimes favorite things you hate? I added a heart to it, so I favorited it, but it's still I can always remember how much I hate it. You know, it's like Sheldon's list of enemies on Big Bang Theory. So this poem is called Undetectable, published in the New Yorker, by somebody on purpose, I presume. You don't have to hate it. Listen to it, take it in, you may enjoy it. I had other students the other day I could tell were just because I said I hated it, every time I'd say something, they would go, blah, blah. And I don't necessarily want you to do that. I mean, I know my opinions on poetry. I don't need them to be validated. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. I don't like it. Don't pander to me. Y'all aren't as bad about pandering as other classes sometimes are. Y'all are like, these are my opinions and I like them, so
Yeah.
whatever, bro. Come at me. I got a truck. I actually wasn't thinking about you when I said that, but then I thought a truck, and I went, wait a minute. We do have somebody who just said they drove a truck today. I feel like getting run over. So here we go. Undetectable is the name of the poem. Soundless. Yeah, by the way, it looks like this. One line and a break, and it's almost like double-spaced essay style. And the line lengths are about, I don't know, 5 words long. Soundless, it crosses a line, quiets into a seed. And then whatever makes a seed, almost like gone, but not gone. The air kept its shape. Not antimatter, but the memory of matter, or of it mattering. It doesn't cross my mind now that it whispers so soft it's almost silence, but it's not. Someone dragged the screaming boy so deep into the woods he sounds like the trees now. Gone enough. Almost never here. Daily. Swallowed within a certain window. A pale green trail on the tongue. The pale green pill makes before it's divvied among the ghettos of blood. Dissolves and absolves my scarlet brand. Ritual and proof. Surely science and witchcraft have the same face. My mother praises God for this, and surely it is his face too. Regimen, you are my miracle. I'm trying to do a serious reading here. This swallowing my muscular cult. I am not faithful to much. I am less a genius of worship than I let on. But the pill, emerald dialect singing the malady away, not away, far enough, for now. I am the most important species in my body. But one dead boy makes the whole forest a grave. And he's in there, in me, in the middle of all that green. You probably thought he was fruit.
The ending was kind of.
Yeah, I like the green. It's a little dark.
I have no idea what
Is
the
that it?
freak this is talking about. I don't even
No,
know what it's...
I don't either.
And it's not that not knowing what it's talking about
I mean,
is necessarily a bad thing. It's that I don't feel like this is poetry. It's just a line of confusing imagery.
Read them or rhymes.
I'm sure if I read this over and over and over again, I would understand what it meant. But I don't feel like once I got to the end of this, I would... Like music, okay? There's music that tries to be just intentionally not interesting to listen to. Have you ever heard that sometimes? Like indie bands and people are like, oh, this indie music is so good. It's like, because nobody wants to freaking listen to it. But then there's music that like is good, that is actually decent, has a beat and rhythm, and you know it's fun. Like good music. Like what was it? Oh shoot! I was like I'm sitting on something and it doesn't feel good, so I just moved it, but it was my cord. What was that? Who won the Pulitzer Prize? Kendrick Lamar. What was the song? I heard one song on the Kendrick Lamar album that I actually liked, because I don't like rap.
We talked about this last week.
We did. What was it? It was something like Fear or Damn or something like that. Damn was the name of the album, but that wasn't the name of the song that I liked.
Dude, just Google.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Um,
Kendrick Lamar Pulitzer. Oh, in fact, I think they had the video on the Pulitzer page. Damn, by Kendrick Lamar. It's very weird saying that. Damn won a Pulitzer. DNA. Oh yeah. It moves and it's good. Oh, that's a good one. Well, I don't know. To me, this is more like, if you think of This Is America, that's a more valuable song, I think, for its video than the song itself.
Yeah.
If anybody watches the video, you go, whoa. Then you just listen to the song and you're like, that's pretty good.
That's why it got popular, was because of the video.
Yeah. I feel like, though, and see, I don't know how good the song is, but I know that Childish Gambino, he tries to write music that has substance.
And he does. If you listen to his camp,
But it's also interesting. It's also something you want to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Like he tells a story about how he has a crush on a girl or whatever, and they're riding home from the bus in a song. It's really good.
He does that with his like comedy too.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there should be. I feel like to me, my personal feelings on poetry, there should be something worth looking at in terms of both form and content. Like I feel like if you make something that's intentionally befuddling, that is not at all beautiful nor tries to be. Granted, it could be, for example, if this were say about, and it very well could be, if this were about like an abortion, this poem, maybe that's the point. Maybe it's intentionally ugly. Maybe it's not meant to look like poetry because it's supposed to be something that's horrible looking. And maybe she's saying she had, like, I don't know what the green is. I really don't, like, if I had to think about it. Shoot, where'd it go? What was it? Oh yeah, it was on the photos. Because it talks about there being a seed, and then there's somehow a boy, ghettos of blood.
It sounds like nonsense.
Regimen, like you're having to get over it. Muscular cult. I mean, there's a lot of, to me, like body imagery in here. The pill, emerald dialect, is it a green pill that does abortion? I don't really know. One dead boy makes the whole forest a grave. Like, I don't know. That imagery almost says to me it could be abortion, but I don't like the poem. And somebody might say to me, well, poetry doesn't have to be pretty. It's like, but I don't. I feel like I don't know.
I feel like it should be.
Like, is it a poem? Yes, but do I think it's good? I don't.
I feel like it should be pretty.
Right, is.
Wow.
There's some parts of it that I think that I kind of like. I can't point them out because I don't really remember them. But like they're okay. But like the beginning where he it's almost like it's silence, but it wasn't. Stuff like.
Oh yeah, all those contradicting statements. I didn't like that either.
Like
that rubbed me the wrong way.
It sounded like when a teacher tells a kid that you gotta write a poem. He's like, I don't want to do it, and just throws whatever onto the paper.
I don't like. I guess what I don't like is poetry that just sounds like somebody uttering sentences in a fragmented way and very serious. Like, for example, if it feels like I can write it without trying myself, I don't really like it. So if I sit here and I'm like, I don't know, if I write a poem about teaching, and I just say it. Like, I feel like, like out loud spoken impromptu beat poetry is not good. Like if I go, standing, speaking.
I'm telling you.
No listening.
Those are those types of.
Only talking.
Those are the kinds.
As I just
poems.
Sound like I'm trying to be super serious.
They're the kinds of poems that you find where people snap their fingers in coffee shops, and somebody gets up on stage and they look all, a scene kid or whatever, and then everybody afterwards, and he's like super serious, and then everybody afterwards is just like, yeah, that was so good.
Yeah, that's weird.
That's where you find shitty poems.
It's like they're poems you don't want to clap
I feel like that's a poem I would find there. Like, I feel like she got up there and she was so serious and she was like, this is so deep.
Isn't that awkward?
And then everybody else was like, that was so deep.
Do I have more? I think I do.
Jokes that are not funny, but you still laugh.
Didn't they do that on 21st Street?
Yeah, I think they did.
Give me a sec. I got more. I got two more here.
She made got up there and said one, and you're just like,
He's like,
Yeah.
I have two more here that kind of fit this same bill. They're not good, or at least in my opinion, they are not good. So
Still cold.
you're still what?
She's wearing like 3 layers and she's still cold.
Yeah, the building's very cold. I guess it's because it's cold outside. They weren't prepared for that because it's Texas.
My house was cold yesterday.
Oh, my house.
Okay, listen to this one. Listen to this one. This is called Bees.
Bees?
Bees.
Like bumblebees?
It's this long. You see there's 3 stanzas, 6 lines each. Well, no, there's 7 lines here, 7 lines here, 6 lines there. Okay. I can't remember if I like this one or not, so we'll see. Open up your hives, O bees. I probably don't like this one. Open up your hives, O bees. Ciphers on the fringes. The conceit of using a word like ciphers. Open up your hives, O bees, ciphers on the fringes of childhood, honeyed inheritance of self among others. I'm already pissed off. My grandfather and godfather carved their pockets of solitude by donning white suits. Meticulous, industrious natures each quietly worshipped a queen, each quietly stoked my inheritance. How could I have known the vastness being stored up for me? How it would remain long after the bees had flown? The moment I was handed the comb dripping, the stickiness, the wax in my teeth, the overwhelming sweetness. It's over now. The bees, long gone, belong to barefoot gardens deserted. Summer no longer sleeps, 1 foot swollen in her ice bucket. Jars of honey no longer arrive from Lion, broken in the mail. I don't know what this is. I don't know what it's not that so much that I don't know what it means. It's that I read it and I don't want to know what it means.
It's just
I don't care what it means because it doesn't beckon me to try to figure it out.
See, like these do.
It seems like somebody who's not somebody who enjoys the words they're writing, but someone who writes them because they feel like you should understand how important it is that they wrote them.
They write them in order to be recognized, basically.
Kind of.
Yeah. Right.
Like, look how important this is, and it drives me nuts.
But it doesn't really say anything.
Yeah, to me it doesn't. And then we have Origin by Katie Condon. By the way, that one was by Maya Ribot. It's 2 lines at a time. 2 lines at a time. I was born inside a mourning dove. There is wind in all of us. Here I am in a century that has its eyes shut tight. Don't I know exactly why I'm here? In the end, the sun varnishes us all in amber. Undress for that light. There is flight in all of us. Find me in the pasture sewing bluebonnets into each bend of our laughter. I was born inside the decayed mourning dove you found shaded in lavender. Call me maggot.
Call me what?
Maggot, in italics. When you die, don't worry. I will rise up from you, opaque as the angel admiring your rotted waste. I, too, will die, am dying, though I am a maggot, though I covet fragrance from your breathless flowering. I am born from grieving. I am as afraid as you. I want to punch you. That's me. That was my line. Now, contrast that with this one. So there is one poem I actually...
That one was my least favorite.
Of all of them?
Yes.
There actually is one poem so where's the heart?
Like,
where's the freaking heart up in there?
line of it.
Okay, so here's one I actually enjoy that was published because I don't know, it gets to something that we like and it makes me happy. And it doesn't have to always have to be happy poems, but this one's functioning. It's written like a back and forth, like a scroll, kind of like it goes zigzags, you know.
So you know it's gonna.
And this one zigzags. I don't know that it's gonna have a sound that I enjoy. I don't know, but this goes. Even I, pure in my loneliness. It's called Kiss Cam, by the way. Have you heard of the Kiss Cam at like sporting events? Says, even I, pure in my loneliness, in line for the good soft pretzels, sprint back to my seat. Sentinel for the bare-shouldered, the cut-off clad, and sugar-smudged. For tall boys trampled in the greased-up mustard pumps. For men threshing against a particularly elusive curveball. Brutal, the bay's sure fog. For seabirds diving the dumpsters, the chanted snatches of old cheers. The burnished, pre-Raphaelite glow. See, I feel like this one's...
It just flows.
No, this one's saying stuff that I feel like the other ones would say, but I care about it saying it here. Like pre-Raphaelite, talking about like an artistic period and like the way light looks in those paintings. But I don't know. I feel like it's going somewhere. I feel like it's doing something. It trawls the crowd, patrons cast for tonight's brief drama. Here is the reluctant husband holding out until the final second for an automatic peck. The facade of searching, blur of faces, fireworks bursting up, then the graying couple really going at it, tongue and all. That sounds like something old people they get on the camera. Because you know this going in what a kiss cam is. And so you're not having to kind of figure, it's adding poetry to something we already know and giving it like a poem shape. So I don't know. I like that I'm not having to work as hard because I'm like already kind of told, but it's also fun like what it's doing. Like, you know, Like the husband who doesn't want to give his wife a kiss, and two old people just go at it. I feel like I've seen these people before. Applause almost crushing the crowd back into itself. Finally, each eager couple leans forward. The young parents score the finale. So intent on writing a bag of popcorn, they nearly miss it. Blush at the audience cheering and pull each other close. They will, I think, remember this always. A moment sponsored by insurance ads and California citrus. That's kind of funny. Their faces hung between zeros. At gate 4, their photo will be waiting. Real as the syrup coursing through the soda fountains, the snow cones melting abstractly from their vivid rainbows. They think they're not being transformed by time and its obstruction, by the lyric strands of light framing their embrace. Who doesn't want to be caught like that? Trophy, bronze by the 7th, 29 forever. Or trophy bronze by the 7th, 29 forever, held in the floodlights blaze. Admit it. Beer flattening, sack of peanuts nearly picked clean of duds. You want, too, to be propelled into pixel and hung next to the late summer moon. You want to be the woman bursting onto the screen alone while the stadium around her burns. I like that. Like, I like that it puts the kiss cam and the experience of being at like a baseball stadium like into context. And like, isn't there like, can you think of that moment like when you're in the stadium, like you feel that anticipation, like when they do like the kiss cam thing and you're like, could be me. And then if it's not, you go, whew. But you kind of wanted it to be you. When you see those people have that moment up there, you're like, oh, this could be me.
It always lands on my husband and I.
Really?
Always.
At like the big stadiums?
I'm talking, we went to the Stars game. We went to the
Oh, I was thinking baseball.
like Frisco and in Arlington. It always lands on my husband and I. I'm like, get ready.
I want to land on my wife and I. We'll have that moment. But we won't be 29 forever. But I like that in the photo. You take the photo. Do they offer a commemorative photo? I didn't know that. So I just assumed that I was like, this is right. It's almost like going to Six Flags. You go down the ride, you know, and you get to keep it.
Because I didn't know you got to keep it.
I didn't either. Like they're like, by the way, I guess somebody comes to you in the crowd and says, hey, there's a photo if you want to. Do they buy it or you just get to keep it?
No, I have to buy it.
How much is it though? Like $50?
No, at the Stars game it was like 20.
Oh, it's not bad at all.
No,
I would pay $20 to have that forever.
A big one and then like.
Because it's almost like a miniature winning the lottery. Winning the lottery is like money and millions of chances and oh my gosh, I won. But this is like I went to a game.
Never win the lottery.
You're like, I went to a game. A camera had a chance at pointing at me. It did, and now I can buy the photo to commemorate it. Ah, that sounds nice. You're like, oh, when will we ever get a chance to do this again? It's so great, Chris. This is so. It's so I like how random this was. That's my wife. She was saying that. And they're just gonna be like, let's go to all the sports games, and then we don't get its picture taken again, and she's be like, I don't want to go to these anymore. This is getting boring. Okay, so we've talked long enough about poems that have nothing to do with this class. My take on modern poetry. But let's get to a poem that, for the most part, I think we're going to spend more time on Dover Beach than we will on. No, yeah, but To His Coy Mistress is what we're going to do.
Okay.
Because that one, I feel like once we understand what it's about, we've gotten what we need to get out of it. It's one of those where mostly the puzzle itself and figuring out what it says is the value. It's very quotable for poets now, but I feel like there's not a whole lot extra to talk about. I mean, there's teenagers want girls, like boys want girls. Or I mean, I guess not necessarily these days, right? So people are attracted to people in inappropriate ways, we'll say. In 535 is where To His Coy Mistress is. It's also on your internets if you don't have the book. It's set up in a 3-stanza structure, and I can basically tell it to you like this. It is, here's what we would do, then stanza 2 is, but here's the reality, and then stanza 3 is,
Here's what we should do.
so here's what we should do. So, I'm going to read the whole thing first, then we'll say, hey, do we understand it? And then we'll go through it line by line to kind of make sure we do. Had we but world enough and time, this coyness lady were no crime. We would sit down and think which way to walk, and pass our long love's day. Thou by the Indian Ganges side shouldst rubies find. I by the tide of Humber would complain. I would love you 10 years before the flood, and you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of the Jews. My vegetable love should grow vaster than empires, and more slow. 100 years should go to praise thine eyes, and on thy forehead gaze. 200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest. An age at least to every part, and the last age should show your heart. For, lady, you deserve this state, nor would I love at lower rate. But at my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near, and yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. Then worms shall try that long-preserved virginity, and your quaint honor turn to dust, and into ashes all my lust. The grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace. Now, therefore, while the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew, and while thy willing soul transpires at every pore with instant fires, now let us sport us while we may. And now, like amorous birds of prey, rather at once our time devour, than languish in his slow trapped power. Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness up into one ball, and tear our pleasures with rough strife through the iron gates of life. Thus, though we cannot make our sun stand still, yet we will make him run. Everybody get that? Made perfect sense?
It's like the beginning part makes sense to me, but the middle part. The end I get too. It's the middle part for some reason that I just didn't get.
This is one of those poems I feel like is really rewarding in terms of just its meaning, like what it literally means. Once you get it. So we got to go through line by line. It's one of those where it's like you got to go line by line to understand what it's saying, and kind of consider it line by line. It actually is an incredibly influential poem too. It influenced a number of poems that came after it. Some of the poems that we read today that are more like modern, contemporary, and happened in like the 1900s will all reference back to this. And when you really get down to it, and I'll tell you what it's essentially about. It's a boy who wants to have sex with a girl.
Yeah.
And when you really get down to it, so much of what we have in, I don't know, like humanity boils down to these impulse-like desires that we have for other people. We just want companionship. We want, and sometimes with the guys, they want just the basic animal instinct stuff. But it's really weird because it's basic animal instinct stuff he's trying to write beautiful poetry about. And if you look, 1621 to 1678 is when he lived. So he lived to be about, 56 years old. 1678 is when he died. It was published in 1681, not during his life. Probably because it wouldn't be a great idea to get it published during your life, because this is pretty salacious. It's almost like poem porn. We haven't read it yet, so you haven't seen.
That time period,
that escalated too fast.
Well, I mean, if you'd seen all the things I was seeing as I was reading the poem, you would agree. Let's take a look.
No, it is.
It's there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
So he says here, he starts out, had we but world enough in time, this coyness lady were no crime. So if we had, essentially is what he's saying with that construction, if we had enough of the world and enough of time, then this coyness lady would not be a crime. So if we had all the world, if we had all the time in the world, then it wouldn't matter that you're being coy. And coy is like playfully shy. Specifically, guys used to use it in poetry in the sense that the girl wouldn't, in the more colloquial phrase I think everybody will understand, which sounds crass, she won't give it up. He wants it, she won't let him have it. He wants the sex, and she's like, I don't want to give you the sex, essentially. They call it her being coy. So he says, if we had all the time in the world, this would not be a big deal. He said, we would just sit down and think which way to walk, pass our long loves. Can you imagine having all the time in the world, and you're like, hey, which way do you want to walk today?
Yeah.
You know, let's just go for a stroll. He says you could, by the Indian Ganges side, find rubies. So, big famous river. You could just go wander along the side of that river and be like, hey, look, honey, big ruby. Oh, another ruby. Just find them on the side of the river. Me, I would write poetry. That's what complain means back in the day. He's like, I would just sit there and write poetry by the side of the Humber. So that's what he would do. She's finding rubies by one river in the world. He's over there by this other river, like writing some poetry. And what's he writing about? He says, basically their love is kind of, I think, what he's talking about here. He says, I would love you 10 years before the floods. I mean, what the flood is, it capitalized. What flood? What? If you're thinking you might be right, go ahead and say it.
Are you talking
It ain't the rain outside. Yeah, Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark. So he'd love you 10 years before God wiped everybody off the face of the earth except for Noah and his family.
Wait.
So he probably is just the descendant of Noah. So it's not possible he would love you 10 years before God wiped everybody else out. That doesn't make any sense. But he would do it, paradoxically. And he says, and you should, if you please, refuse to give me the sex till the conversion of the Jews. Anybody know what the Jews believe that's different than Christianity?
The Messiah hasn't come.
The Messiah has not come. Christians are like, Jesus, that was the Messiah guy. Jews were like, he was a guy, but he's not the Messiah guy. We're still holding out for the Messiah.
This is why they're considered the chosen ones.
Right. And so, does anybody know when the Jews will convert to Christianity? All of them.
When Jesus comes back.
So essentially the end of time, according to Christianity, right? So the end of what we consider to be the world, that's when the Jews will all convert to Christianity.
Finally admit that the Messiah has come.
Yeah, essentially I think the New Testament says something like when Jesus comes down, everybody goes, oh, you're Jesus. That's Jesus. He really was. Got it, God. Thank you. Sorry. Our bad. So, essentially he's saying, I would love you 10 years before remembered time until the end of something that's never going to happen.
So almost all of time.
Yeah. Like basically all of eternity. And he says, my vegetable love should grow vaster than empires and more slow. Think of like think of America almost as an empire. Like his love is going to be like a vegetable that grows slower than a vegetable and eventually to the size of like America. Long time. Big old long time.
All of eternity, he just said. So.
Let's see. And he says, 100 years should go to praise thine eyes and on thy forehead gaze. And now he's talking about the love that he would, like the poetry he would write.
The amount of time he would love each part of it.
Yes. 100 years should go to praise thine eyes on thy forehead. So we've heard the phrase, the eyes are the window to the soul.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from, like when that happened. I'm having a lot of trouble concentrating. Hey, back of the room, back of the room, back of the room, back of the room, back of the room. Y'all hear anything I'm saying? Radios? Thank you. Please stop talking for the duration, I think would be the best thing to do. Because I can't concentrate at all. So, 100 years to go to bed, eyes on the forehead gaze. So, we got 100 years for the eyes and the forehead, this much. He's in just 100 years writing poetry about that. Love it. Use the best. Forehead wrinkles, the curves are nice. The eyes, I like this strand of the color, this strand of the color, this strand of the color. Very detailed. But he shows where his mind really is in the next line. 200 to adore each breast.
That's 400 years.
So we get 100 years to the eyes, the windows of the soul, but 400 for...
But it's 200 for each, so it's 400.
Right, 400. So 200 for this one, 200 for that one. But only 100 for like the eyes,
Yeah.
which are far more complicated and complex and beautiful.
Yeah, they say to fall in love with the person's eyes.
And it's like he gets impatient with the rest of the body. He says, but 30,000 to the rest. He's like, eyes and breasts and the rest of it. 30,000 for that. So he just, but he says the last age should show your heart. Aw, right? Let's concentrate on the heart. Not the physical anatomical, but like the concept of the heart. Love, the caring of the woman. And he says, for lady, you deserve this state, nor would I love at lower rate. He's like, I'm not going to love you any less than the way I just explained. Or would I? You ever heard that anything you say before the word but doesn't really matter? If somebody says, listen, I love you, but you're about to hear something that expresses why they may not actually love you. And is like, I really respect who you are. No, it's like with Kanye. What did he say? He was like, listen, I'm going to let you finish, but Beyonce was the greatest video of all time. So essentially, like, the fact that you just won this award really doesn't matter to me at all, and I don't believe it. That's essentially what Kanye said. That was years ago now. Does that make me just old that I'm even mentioning that? I feel like it's still relevant, though, because now Taylor versus Kanye 2020.
Well, because that's like Kanye's whole
Presidential
demeanor,
election.
He doesn't give a crap about nothing
Yep.
but himself.
Yeah.
He's like,
Everything
"I don't care
before the
about
but
you."
doesn't matter. So, the very next word in the poem is but. Here's how I would love you, but. At my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near. So to him, time is horses in a chariot racing. That's what chariot's for, the racing behind
He
him.
doesn't
Here they
think about
come.
a lot of time.
You know, they're coming. And what's in front of them? Deserts of vast eternity. That's all that's in front of them. The desert of eternity. Deserts are bad. They're hot. Behind you is chariots like pushing you toward the desert. You have nowhere to go. And then he says, thy beauty shall no more be found. That's sweet. He's like, nowhere in this time that I'm going to live this life will I be able to find a beauty such as yours. It's sweet. It's not bad.
I mean, it's sweet, but we know his intentions, so.
You don't know them yet. You just know all you know is based on the fact that he's saying, you won't have sex with me. Really like your breasts. And that's all we've heard so far that's really like his intentions. That's all we really know is those two lines. But this is where we get it. Is right here.
Yeah.
Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song.
What does that mean?
I don't know. Let's figure it out. Nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. He wants to sing into her vault.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, that's what it is. He wants to sing into her vault. And if you're having trouble figuring out what the vault is, think of a vault as, you know, what we have in a bank that locks the money up. You lock it up, make sure nobody can get into the vault. Well, he wants to go inside the vault and sing into it. Whatever singing is, I don't know. And marble is meant to, I think, give us the hint that this is, you know, marble is pale, it's white, it's beautiful, but still, it's like the old statues were made out of marble. Those all like Michelangelo's David. And, what now? It's a dirty old poem.
I didn't even get it. Like when I read it, I was like, "What is this?" And then now that you're breaking it down, it's like,
It's terrible. And then what's worse, he's like, listen, I want to sing into your vault.
virginity.
That's what I want to do. But look what he says next. He says, if I don't sing into your vault, here's what happens.
Yeah, that's what,
Then worms shall try that long preserved virginity, and your quaint honor turn to dust. He's saying, if you don't have sex with me, she's like, oh, I don't want to mess with my honor. I want to retain my honor. It's not respectful if we have sex. Oh my gosh. Then what's going to happen is you die. I'm dead. Oh, I'm just going to stay a virgin forever. No. Worms are going to start crawling through the things that you protected for so long during life, and your virginity is going to be taken no matter what. So do you want me, sexy man-child who exists right now, to take your virginity, or do you want the worms to do it later when you're dead and like rotting? It's disgusting. It's not. So you realize too at this point, you realize at this point, this is not a poem he ever actually meant to be a successful argument. I don't know of any woman I've ever met who would respond to, you know, he's got a point. Don't want the worms to do it. You know, they're gonna be like, come on, this is disgusting. Like, get back off of this. Like, come on. Like an old tomato? Is that what you? Who said old tomato? So he says after that, your quaint honor turned to dust. What does your honor matter if you're dead? You know. And he says, into ashes all my lust. So all my lust is nowhere. Because he considers his lust to be a fire and the ashes burn. And I love, this is one of my favorite two lines of the poem, and it's one of the ones most commonly quoted. The grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace. Everybody knows the grave's nice and it's quiet. You get a little box to yourself. But I don't think anybody, gets to like embrace in the grave, right? You're not going to be laying there and you're like, and then like the next coffin over, you're like, Hey, you look pretty good. Do you want to, like, you and me get a little something? Yeah? All right. And then you, like, go through the dirt. It just doesn't happen. So he's being sarcastic here. He knows absolutely that nobody embraces once they hit the grave. You're dead. And he's assuming zombies don't exist. So, I mean, that's one of the most quoted lines. Now, therefore, but he says, here's what we should do. Now, therefore, while the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew. So you're young. It's like a morning dew, like fresh. And while thy willing soul transpires at every fore with instant fire. I love how he's telling her, your soul transpires with instant fires. You have the passions of lust. He's telling her what she feels. That never works, buddy. Never works. He says, let us sport us while we may. It's like a sport, like a game. It's fun. And now, like amorous birds of prey, rather at once our time devours. Amorous birds of prey. Have you ever seen? I looked up one time. Amorous like falcons and eagles and stuff having sex and like how it happens. Some of them have sex in the sky as they're falling, and it looks like a mash of talons and feathers. That's what he's going for. He's talking like, just they're so pent up. That's what he's thinking of. It's just this explosion of lust. Yes.
I just wanted to say something that I found in that kind of.
Yes.
Termites,
Mm-hmm.
when they do that, they fly up and in the air,
Yeah.
and then when they land, they rip each other's wings off, so they can never do it with anybody else.
Oh, that's super violent.
And it's,
That's some praying. Well, that's some praying man.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, the woman's like,
Well, but I mean, she still gets to live with the guy afterwards. It's like, it's kind of like if for some reason,
it's their version of monogamy.
is honestly.
what if there was like a pill that guys had to start taking the moment that they got into a marriage that completely killed all of their like attractiveness to anybody else somehow?
Wouldn't that be nice?
No.
Women.
No, it wouldn't be.
Welcome to birth.
It depends on whether you want the results or not. Have you ever seen Clockwork Orange, the film?
Yes.
like to have.
It's a really good and messed up film. At the end of the movie, they've essentially figured out how to make him not commit crimes, but he only does it not because he doesn't want to. It shows him in the like inside his head, he's like raping a girl in front of a crowd. That's what he really wishes he was doing. But nobody is. He's not doing it now because they've conditioned him like through science.
Right.
So is it really impressive if a guy can not be with any other girl if it's just because of a pill?
Hey,
Or do you more prefer like if a guy is like, oh yeah, every day, man, every day it's a struggle. I want to go out and go to a bar and get drunk and take some girl home, but I love you. I feel like girls would go, did she want to be with a guy? But but biologically, every guy should want to. I mean, if you look at what animals do, a lot of animals, not all of them, but they want to like spread the species, make sure that we not market territory. They want to make sure that they survive. So the girl one takes care of like little pups and stuff, and the guy just goes out and like, what was that? I read something really funny. It was like male guinea pig breaks into female enclosure, impregnates 178 female guinea pigs.
That really happened.
Yeah.
So I bought 2, and 2 turned into like 30 really fast.
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, and I put
Yeah.
them in separate cages like it's a thing.
But so it's essentially like if you give a guy a pill. In fact, honestly, most people would probably just want the pill. The guy would be like, "Yeah, just give me the pill. I want the pill. Give me the pill." Just so he doesn't have to worry about it. It's just so much easier this way. The love pill.
I actually watched the movie the other day. They had a love pill.
The anti-lust love pill. The ALLP.
It was called Zoe or whatever, but yeah, they had invented this pill that makes couples experience falling in love for the first time again. So all that euphoria and like you're perfect and everything, I just fell in love with you. It was a pill that made them feel that again by firing off all their synapses that do that. Like
Oh, weird.
Releasing serotonin.
That'd be
and
nice to
dopamine
have
and all
every
that.
once in a while.
Just the
I mean, yeah.
renewed passions of love.
So it ended up
Yeah.
being like a drug that people got addicted to because like they couldn't feel anything without that pill.
It sounds like the fountain of youth.
People that got addicted to it like had to take it all the time because they couldn't feel love any other way after they'd taken it.
Is this a real thing? Or is it a movie?
This was a movie. It's a movie on
Heather's like, how much?
was it on Amazon? Oh no, it looked really
Where
good.
can I buy this?
I would buy it. I mean,
That's
yeah.
a card.
I'd be taking falling in love pills all day. I forgot what they called it though.
Not me.
Cereal.
I'm not that kind of person. Like, I mean, other than caffeine, which I feel like just enhances my experience of life as it's already happening. It just kind of like elevates what's already going on. You don't really get like high from caffeine. You just kind of get
Well,
like
that's kinda like
a little
what
more
this
jazzed
does.
up. Huh?
This doesn't necessarily make you high. Like they gave it to a couple who.
It's like plus 10 perception. That's what.
They gave it to a couple who'd been married for 35 years, and so this couple has loved each other for 35 years. They just got to experience falling in love with each other for the first time again.
And I guess
You know, it's
I
always
can
a
see that.
magical feeling.
Because you want that. I'm trying to figure out a way to transition, but I can't. Let's go to the end. So he says, and this is where he gets to the poem, the stuff that's really quoted in the future. And I feel like the older you guys get, I'd say if you've already hit like 30, you probably already have felt this somewhat. If you're still in your 20s, maybe a little bit. If you're like 21 or younger, you probably have no concept of this yet. And if you do, you probably need to back off because you shouldn't be so worried about this yet. But essentially, like the worries of time. Like all I figure out now, try to figure out how to do now as a 35-year-old dad, is trying to find ways to get more time. That's the only thing that matters to me. It's not stuff, it's time. This thing right here is really a time device because it's not a slow computer. Every little tiny thing that gets faster when I get a new computer takes time that I don't have to worry about losing. And then I get the videos rendered and edited faster because the computer works faster, so I actually end up saving myself more time. So it's actually a time-saving device more so than it is like, oh, I want a fun computer. Because I don't even play video games on this. It's a gaming computer. I don't play video games on.
No, but gaming computers run better.
They run faster, yeah. I mean, especially if you get a pretty decent one. So this says here, rather at once our time devour than languish in his slow trapped power. Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness up into one ball. So he's like, let's take everything we got, roll it into one little tiny ball, and then we'll tear our rough pleasures with rough strife through the iron gates of life. Now, my Harvard doctorate, PhD English teacher, she said the iron gates of life were the iron gates to the vault. I mean, I guess. I just don't see that as overtly obvious here. I feel like he's just like busting through a gate, being like, "Let's go!" Like just like let's take life out of maybe. But I don't feel like him being like that.
In terms of her, when a woman loses her virginity, she changes a lot, personality-wise and everything.
Is he even thinking about that here?
No.
I mean, he is married, I think.
No, that's probably not what he's thinking about, but that's what you could get out of it because this is all a reference to her.
Oh yeah, it's true. And then this last couple of lines are the ones that are the most probably quoted of the whole poem. Well, I guess other than the rolling all our strengthness and all of our sweetness into one ball, that's like, compressing emotions till they burst. Those are pretty popular, but also this. Thus, though we cannot make our son stand still, yet we will make him run. So we cannot stop time. We don't have the ability. Because he's been talking about time and how time is always coming in the whole poem. So he's like, we can't stop time. But we can make so much use of our time that the sun is jealous that we're using so much of him, so that time is now the sun is going to start racing to keep up with us because we're doing so much with it. It's like, look how much sex they're having. Chase them. And he's talking about love. He's just talking about sex the whole time. We didn't even get to the other one. Damn it. We will.
It's because we talked about all the poems.
In fact, I'll probably just so you can get the quiz out of the way. The quiz is not going to open today. It's probably going to open like on Thursday.
Does that mean we have two?
If we have a chance to talk about it on Thursday when I assign the research paper, maybe we will. But I just don't think I'm going to do that.
So the quizzes that we didn't take last week, because we don't have one this week, we'll just wait this week.
One quiz or two quizzes?
Yeah, there is no second. Well, I'm not going to do a quiz over poems we haven't even talked about yet. So we're not doing the second poem set quiz. We're doing the first poem set quiz because we just talked about those poems.
Well, that's not until.
But I can tell you that the question about Dover Beach is probably going to involve being depressed about the fact that we live in a world that increasingly values science and reasoning and the world and measuring things. And
Yeah, our next quiz
it is less importantly worried about faith and spirituality and believing in things. It's more about what can I prove, not what do I just believe. So that I think me saying that will get you the answer to that Dover Beach question. So we don't have to wait to do the quiz. If I end up not getting to talk about it on Thursday. So if you just kind of
But what would we?
It's faith versus science, I guess, is like the closest, because if you look the readings next to Dover Beach, one of the readings it has is Darwin, and talking about how Darwin's evolutionary theories. And by the way, theory, you've heard the phrase theory of evolution. Theory does not mean a theory does not mean like, oh, we're not sure about this. It's like the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It works in every single case. It's just that it's an infinite number of numbers that it can work with. So the Pythagorean theorem, while it's called a theorem, it's only called a theory because you can't test every single possibility. So that's why it's a theory.
Proven fact.
You can't prove it. You can't. It's proven. It's almost like saying, it's almost like you trying to say like, my true love is my true love. But the only way to fully prove that, you can say like, it's a fact that my husband is my true love. You can't prove it unless you find every single person who's ever lived in history, get into a relationship with them, and have a stronger love at the one you have now. So the amount of things you would have to do to physically prove that it works in every single case is too many. That's why it's called a theory. So every single species, they've seen evidence of evolution in every single case. The problem is they haven't seen every single species that's ever lived. They've only got data for like the last 100 years or 150 years, because that's the first time that the theory popped up. And it's just like with carbon dating. It's like carbon dating, we can't actually physically go back to those times and measure the temperature and see that that's the true temperature that it was. We only know that it's an indicator of temperature. So it's a theory that's proven in every instance we have. It's just we can't prove every single infinite instance going back to the infinity. We can't do that. That's why it's called a theory. But anyways,
So it's faith versus science.
it's essentially like faith versus the idea of science, that there's a measurable world and that's what we should care about, instead of the spiritual world. And if you look at that, a lot of that time, like everybody's saying, oh, the theory of evolution is amazing, and like the theories of geology, and like that the Earth is not the center of the universe, and that's a new idea. Is like, maybe the sun is the center of the universe. Oh, it turns out that's not even the center of the universe. It's the center of the galaxy that's the center. No, actually, that's not even the center of the universe itself. It's just so they're all like coming to this realization that the world is merely a tiny place and not the end-all, be-all of places. It's not even the center of reality. And so that was a realization coming at the time, and he was a clergyman, the son of a clergyman, or he was the son of a clergyman, and he was like a schoolmaster himself who talked a lot on religion and politics, so it was a very important issue to him. So for him, faith, very, very important, and he hated being in a world where faith was increasingly becoming devalued day after day. And we've done so much talking about it now, we ain't even read the damn poem. But I think when you see that, you'll see he's talking about faith was once full, but now we have a world of chaos, and there's no certitude. There's no. Let us be true to one another, because that's all we have.
He says faith was full, but now he only hears the melancholy moan withdrawn.
Yeah. Now you only hear the real world. That's all that people are wanting to focus on. So, if we end up not getting to it on Thursday, that's what you'll need to know about that poem in order to answer that question. Yes, thank you. Oh gosh. Y'all have a good day.